Mm-hmm.
So, when is thinking an impediment?
When you're engaged in it. So it's always an impediment. Thinking is an impedimency. Thinking is obstructionism. It is the obstruction. So
is it as simple as when one is not thinking?
If one could ever realize that there's the possibility and, actual, process of thoughtlessness. You see, the thought is made of thoughtlessness. That's too deep for most people.
Is it
the source of thought is thoughtlessness. Right? So, same with the body. Any form is the problem. Thinking in form, thinking by form, because thinking is a form of obstruction. So, limitation on enlightenment by itself. It is what could be called the problem, not the solution. So, being conscious beyond thinking is the solution. So, knowing there is no thinking and there is no thinker and nothing to think about is more part of the solution than the problem. And we see it very vividly when we are in the company of those who are caught and stuck, say, bound to, say, identified as, thinking, right, the thinking type. Don't be that. Be beyond that. Get off that. See, it's like a crippled camel. It's not going to get you very far. All right. Comment. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about the chakra system, that's its purpose. So the purpose of the chakra system, so the system of psychic centers in a certain sequence, representing the gross, the vulgar, physical, gravitation, all the way up a scale to enlightenment beyond the body, bodiless enlightenment. It's useful to know that thinking is low on the totem pole. It is low on the totem pole. It's unnecessary. The conscious use of thought is necessary. But the mechanical use of thought is deadly, if that's all you've got.
You've said in the past that thinking is okay so long as it's not using you.
Exactly. The same point, stated differently. Mm-hmm. So clearly what we saw last night was somebody being used by some kind of compulsive thought process, so, that they weren't conscious of, so, that they were stuck in. So they have to keep coming back to the same question, because unless it's answered satisfactorily at the self level, it's not being handled to enlighten the person. So, and they are the one who's not enlightening themselves. Because they're possessed by and as thought is. Noise.
Is there healthy or correct use of the thought capacity?
Well, you can read something that can tell you, if you can't know for yourself, can tell you to stop thinking. Breathe. Relax. Be the light of your body. So there are different devices and techniques that can be used to attempt to bypass the function of being possessed by thought processes which are born, inbred. And we're talking primarily about the thing called wrong thought, false thought, self-limiting thought, which is probably all thought to a greater degree than most people know. So no thought is the real thought, the thought of no thought. So, in other words, the thought of formlessness, not as a concept, but as a fact, is more important.
It seems like a lot of the teachings that are out there, particularly the Buddhist teachings, have to do with, at least on the Mahayana level, to do with mind control and the concept of voidness. And what they're talking about is conceptualizing this reality that one potentially eventually gets to by understanding the mind and its nature well enough to shut it down. And it seems like here we're sort of bypassing a lot of that by your continuous reminder to cut it out. Cut it out. No
Well,
thinking.
the living of it, see, we need to live in the continuum of awakeness, or in the form of emptiness, see, formlessness, the form of formlessness. See. And before a person can enter anything near the practice of such a technique, say meditation device or whatever one wants to call it, you have to be open beyond yourself to do that. A little paradox there. You can't be it to get it, because you're already it. You were never not it. Yeah. So it's a bizarre process of recovering one's relationship for access to the all-knowing nothing. See, the greatness inside. The traditionalists have all kinds of names for it. See, they call it the great goodness. God, for one, for others, various names.
So is there something special about the human condition that allows for this interesting opportunity to have all this baggage, particularly in the mental realm, and then, I don't know, transmute it or shift it, or, as you say, just stop it and be...
Well, you don't just stop it. You're already beyond it, so we can say stop it. But it's really a process of knowing beyond, like recovering your sense of no thought, see. No thought is really the ongoing good thing about this community. You call it practitioners. It's already present. It's just being awake to what it is. It's already ongoing. So you need to be awake to what it is being, see. Is being itself, see, already, always, here now. See, getting into that, which is not a thought, really. We're speaking in language, concepts, but it's not about thinking, see. It uses thinking, it uses thought forms to express its non-thoughtness, see. That's true reality, see. Liberated from thinking, feeling, memory, action, experience. See. It's liberated from being, even.
Yeah, so I guess thought is a major problem for certain beings or all beings?
All beings. All beings who are not practicing in this way. All beings who don't know their true nature is thoughtlessness. See, in truth.
What does it take to know that?
Good karma. The whole chakra system, right? We need an instructional device. It's like the key to understanding the dimensions out of which urges and impulses come. And that's what one needs to know. You can be studying music. I get these calls from students and academics, people, master's programs saying, well, what about this, what about that? And it's all maybe too much thinking. It's too much thinking. A PhD level, too much thinking. And when we stop and we start to perceive, let's say that there's a native approach to this, and we call it intuitive knowing, not thinking knowing, not rational knowing, but direct intuitive knowing, which may have something to do with meditation practice, may not, but it has to do with the creative process in terms of how one can play, which is now describing how I play and why I play, what I play. It's a creative urge. So it's not a thought process. It just comes up. It has its own reality. So it's a form of like vomit. You can't stop it. It just comes up. It's got to come up. And then there's a relief after that, a cleansing. So who is thinking that is doing the cleansing? What is thinking that is doing the cleansing? It's a difference. So it's maybe a technical distinction we are making, but we have to acknowledge that there could be a place where certain things arise, like emotions, that are very painful and you can't not experience them. Deep, painful emotions for people. They don't have any real answer for it except that it arises. They feel they have to cry and something warrants that. And there's no slowing that down or laugh. There's no controlling that. So we're talking about different levels where urges are manufactured and urges show up. And that's what we need to respect in terms of what is deeper in nature and then what is superficial, mechanical, or ordinary in nature.
And
including thinking and mental processes, which are just part of a factory, right? Machinery that is operating from a certain level only, a strata level, and so on. Right, the mental processes. Sometimes they are subject to, or what can come through is what we're talking about. And intuition and deepness comes in, and that's usually what stimulates writers to keep doing what they're doing, or scientists to continue on the path. Whereas most of the time they're just thinking, and then all of a sudden, boom, something comes up to have a eureka moment, and they're on good ground for a moment, and then they have to try to recreate that. So, wow, yesterday I had this inspiration, and then all of a sudden today I'm dead, right?
And that deadness, especially for a beginning practitioner or anybody who sits down and attempts to engage with what you're discussing, and so they sit and nothing happens.
Well, they have to read. They have to read, so they have to think. See, so then it's how one is thinking, why one is thinking. See. See, so there could be a genuine need to know something, and so they read from that genuine need to know. It might just be a couple of words. Boom. The rest is habit, maybe, machinery. So you're just reading to read. So you fill yourself up with information, which is layering itself on top of, let's say, the native or intuitive process. Which thereafter could, at best, be used to express the intuitive urge. Could be that. Now, this is all very abstract, perhaps, and theoretical, but for practitioners, you know that as a musician, you have to know when that feeling is there, and you're on that feeling. But there's nothing like it. Nothing like it. So it's good to have that feeling. Call it soul, whatever you want to call it, creative urge. When you're in it and it's using you, it's sweet science, it's sweet knowing, it's sweet expression. See? And prior to that, it's rough going.
How does one discriminate between these different urges?
You have to know. You have to know. It's not a thought process. So don't revert to the thought processes.
Well, if it's not a thought process, what is it?
No, it's not a thought process. It's a knowing.
Yeah.
Distinguish thought processes, thinking to think, from knowing directly what it is. You have to distinguish that. Then that's a matter of intelligence. There's nothing magical about it. Mm-hmm. It's intelligence. If you're not operating at that level of intelligence, then good luck. There's nothing there for you. Mm-hmm. Because we're talking about levels of awareness. And they are like horizontal planes. Layers. Vibrational like scale. It's a vibration scale. Like of light, from darkness to light to brilliance and then blowout. It's all about the scale.
And this probably is also the answer you'd give for somebody trying to understand whether what feels like psychic stuff is coming from another person, or if it's just sort of mental detritus.
Sometimes it's mental when you know it, and then sometimes it's psychic because then it knows itself. It's dead on, so then it's psychic. There's a certainty. We're talking about psychic, but we're not just saying in general the psychic world. We're talking about the certainty of it. The same with creative thought. When that occurs, when that arises, when that bubble or tickle shows up, right, in your brain, whoa, yeah, this is it. This is like a unique combination of words, and then you hear and you hear, right, right.
So, is the psychic related to
the psychic
thought
is
process?
The psychic is a plane of reality that can also use thought. So the body uses thought to express its pain and feeling. You're not doing it, the body's doing it. So when you get hurt, you scream because you're the body at that moment. You're nobody else. Right? So, no, I'm not thinking right now, hey, doc, this hurts. So it's not thought. See? It's an emotion. You have to be able to distinguish what it is and what it isn't. But it's not a thought process. See? We're talking about direct perception at a certain plane of reality, and we have multiple planes of reality people need to study to be aware of. That's why I wrote the Divine Agreement. See? To sharpen up one's sense of what the scales of reality are, or the chakra system as it may be called also. Every one of the books, if you want to call them that have been formulated for people to read out of the experience that has been sort of like processed and undergone and let go of over the years, from let's say beginner's practice to more serious practice, including emotional practice, physical practice, right? The yogas that involve that, devotional practice, of course. Say, mental practice, causal plane practice. Yeah. And the cultivation of, let's say, shamatha, calmness, is really about taming memories and thoughts. It really is that. So you can see and understand that. None of it's necessary. So, being beyond thinking. So, and we're talking about mechanical and troubling thought too, as well as painful thought. So all of this is part of the general washing machine of spiritual practice, and the cleansing of the clothing, of the karmas of your mind, and what you use for identification. So we're talking about identificational clothing and garb that everyone tends to use or believe they have to use to protect themselves or express themselves or be themselves, and so on and so forth. So all of this is part of the stuff that needs to be subject to the burn process, letting go of unnecessary forms of thought, emotion, memory, and other sort of like troubling sort of karmas that come up. But the person must know that for themselves. So in the book, the Divine Agreement, what was more or less represented there as the physical plane, the astral plane, and identificational programs saying, as soon as you start to engage in I am, you're stuck. I am not, you're stuck. See? I am I am not, you're stuck, it's all the same. So, that's, if you read the book now that you've had this conversation, you see it's pregnant with that. How you entrap yourself by identificational programming. No question about it. Why wouldn't I say that? Since it's the truth.
So specific to psychic resonance, is there a formula?
Has to do with timing. Also state of mind, but timing. So there are times. The condition of the universe is set up already. And it's very coincidental. The whole thing is a coincidence. So the whole thing is already psychically established. But people don't know that. If you think about it. When you start looking into astrology, you start seeing even more vivid psychic correspondences, and you perceive them as psychic because they say, oh, whoa, I didn't know that. Oh, this is timing. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, this person is here. I didn't know that. See, or this, you're discovering what is. So you're looking at what's already there, and you're perceiving it and then assuming it in terms of a psychic phenomena. Right? The whole thing is psychic phenomena. It's not just these blazes of psychic phenomena and all of a sudden, man, I'm psychic. No, it's this level of reality that we have to intersect with and cross through, or we don't live at necessarily all the time, but the whole thing is coincidental. The universe is a coincidence of itself. See, it's coinciding itself. Any part of it you talk about is relative to the whole thing. So we're talking about dependent origination. Coincidence, like profound. It's like poof, nothing to say. It's all it all is what it is.
And I think that people want to talk about psychicness in terms of people relating to other people. That seems like the pop interpretation of what psychic is like, I'll feel something from someone else, or they'll feel something.
Yeah, but
from
it's
me.
social garbage.
Yeah.
So social garbage is not what it is. We're talking about coincidence. When you're at a party and you start talking astrology and you say, "Oh, you're that sign." Well, wow, look, I'm this sign, and you get involved in these sort of self-identification games. There's nothing there. It's nothing. It's all coincidence. Otherwise, you wouldn't be at the party with everybody. The whole thing is a coincidence. Coincidentally, we're all here now. So we have to be sharp, beyond coincidence, beyond the perception of it, so to keep it real. So that's it. What you're talking about spontaneously arises without any self. That's what you've been observing here for years. So it's coming up in the dialogue of the Dhamma here. Comes up. So it's not about anybody, it's about everybody. Because it's about nothing. So the emptiness of being, which is a profound coincidence. We're all here being, but not aware of it as such. So you need to be in tune with your own being instead of, these little snippets and the so-called psychic oohs that show up between people as if there's something special about it. But no, none of it is really special. It's just coincidental and self-arising. It means it's not happening for anybody.
And so that's...
then self will make a big deal about it, but there's nothing there. So.
And so is psychic just a sort of layer of timing, or is there another?
It's not a layer of timing, it's a layer of intelligence and knowing. So, seeing into appearances and understanding appearances differently. Psychic's not trippy. See, like intellectuals who are not psychic in a certain way will make it a trippy thing because all of a sudden, they know certain things that show up out of the grace of the great continuum of coincidence. But it's just a little blip. It's nothing, speck. We're all coincidentally here, so we all have psychic responsibility for our feelings and emotions. That's real. So psychic responsibility is to purify yourself of negative and troubling karmas. And programs that separate you from, let's say, truth. That's a psychic responsibility. So it's to heal yourself from your own neurosis, your own confusion, your own self-division, your own anger, your own emotional structures, and your own addictions to people and social karma and communication and talking and looking good. You have to kill looking good. You have to kill it. It's all face stuff. Right? Appearance. We have to go beyond appearances. See, this is really sacred practice. No appearance. Divine appearance. It means everything is what it is. Nothing in particular. Mm. Mm. See, all of your friends and your relatives, need to know. See, what do they need to know most importantly? That's the question. Is it more information about everything else and everybody else? We think we need to know that. No, it's not it. There's no peace or happiness there. You need to know your original nature. And it is stated by the masters as such in plain language. You need to know original nature. Say, heart nature. We need to know that because that's present. So that's ultimate truth of being here now. Well, who wants that? That's too simple, too direct, too empty of excitement. So, information, egoic value. See, it's none there. See, it's like a tree to grass or the rug to the wall. There's nothing. There's no value there. It's association. It's contact. It's a relation. Association by distance and by matter, density, and so on. Material. Proportion. But not truth. It's truth. We need to know the truth of being, more importantly, when we get to that place. If we can get closer to the truth of being, and as musicians, then you might be closer to the truth of what you need to play, for real, not for self-amusement or self-importance, but for heart value. And we can be real with other people and get off all the usual smoke and mirrors, ego manipulation, ego sort of suffering, egoic suffering, self-suffering, self-importance, and so on. Yeah. Because if we notice anything from the elders, they don't care about anything. What should they care about anything? Of course they have concerns. We're humans, so we're surviving, and so it's a relative that takes care of itself. It all takes care of itself. Left alone, everything is better. But we need to know what that left aloneness means. So it's a code word, left alone. Who's, what, why, when, where is it left alone?
I think an important part of this video and these videos from day one, and from an important part of your teaching and your function, as you've been describing in this video in particular, is not the information you're offering for one's own accumulation, but the quality of your being and your presence and your teaching and your offering that helps or even insists that a person drop what they're accumulating and what they're doing and what they're being for the sake of being something deeper, doing something deeper, working from something deeper.
Being true to the heart.
And knowing that and feeling that, and for lack of a better word, understanding that, seems to allow for a shedding that is really the point, not an understanding that is more accumulation.
Becomes necessary to awaken. To what it is, say, in truth and in spirit. And perhaps that's a crisis point, see? The crisis of awakening. So what is beyond self? Fantasy, emotion, and human nature altogether. See? We keep referring to human beings and humanity, but it's really spirituality. that is at stake here, at risk here. Which is what the human is, spirit first. First and last, spirit. Come in, incarnate into the flesh bag of assumed, presumed limitations handed down by the karmic, let's say, patterns and tendencies and programs handed down by the ancestry. But no one is that. We have to use that wisely. For the recreation of this planet, for the better, not for the worse. And the destruction of it, no, that doesn't make any sense. We don't know how that came in except through some perversion of intelligence or some perversion of sort of inferiority, self-programming. Less than noble. We are the higher beingness, as well as the suffering beingness. We have to open to what the truth of the higher beingness is in each one's case. So in the few moments, the rare moments when I'm playing music, it's an invitation to go beyond self-thought, mind, and world altogether, what we're calling, the conventional sense of human being, ordinary, suffering bag of nonsense, torture, self-torture, being neurotic and having to escape from their physical or karmic condition. It's a painful condition because it's not properly understood. And it becomes a workable condition. And so in the case of people who were here last night, yes, I played something which was asking them to listen to the sound, not the music, but the sound of presence, the sound of truth, not just music. Having the mind sort of get carried away by forms. See, again, thought, forms, musical thought forms. It's not what this is about. This is about the original and fundamental truth of silence being the source of all of it. So the paradox is that silence is manifesting all that appears to be other than silence. Formlessness is manifesting form. And out of this matrix of the void is more and more the universe, sort of like springing up, being created by way of the force of expansion. And the universe is understood to be expanding beyond the speed of light. Infinitely so. So that's the mystery, how that can even be calculated and assumed. So in terms of theoretical physics. That's what it is. But that's the mystery.
Would it be fair to say that in the case of the few who are living from a sort of monastic understanding, that their form is creating formlessness?
Is that whose form? What form? It's already created. If they could understand that they were creating formlessness, or put differently, that they are capable of manufacturing emptiness as a form of radiant compassion to all beings, and that might change their behavior a little bit, depending on how they sense that as being true for themselves. Because it's really a profound thought to put on somebody, an ordinary person, street peep, say, you know that you're creating profound compassion right now? Huh? Who, me? But you don't know it. So, then the question is, how can you know that for yourself? So, and then that stops the machinery, may reverse the whole process of action, thinking and feeling in the direction of awakeness, which would be miraculous. So, but it's happening, even now.
What is what is alcoholism? Why do people turn to drink? And is there an alternative either prior to that or once you're really in it?
Oh, practice is the only alternative, but it's not really an alternative, because that means you have come to the crisis point of deciding to not suffer. Say, the ravages of emotion, say, the screaming emotions. The emotions are screaming for enlightenment, but it's not. They are not interpreted as such. Say, and so the scream for enlightenment shows up in the, let's say, the almost raging need for drink. See? That means emotional pleasure, release. Yeah. Yeah. The search for pleasure is the search. Ultimately, it's a search for release. See, from existence. See? That means enlightenment. See? Yeah. So all the pleasures that we know in the body are the same. They're the same urge, the same scream. So all the bodily urges are urges not so much for self-indulgent self-destruction, but for enlightenment, freedom, say, happiness, ultimate freedom and happiness. It's not interpreted as such. See, I was born to alcoholic, so I know the alcoholic urge, because by the time I was 12 years old and still in grade school, I was an alcoholic in a sense, drinking alcohol every day. But I was living in a saloon, so it's normal to do that. Everyone was drinking. Refrigerator was full of beer and booze. Not food. That was the food. And I've heard many arguments, in the mornings. Of, where's the food? There's no food. There's no booze. We can't live on booze, but we did. Yeah. And some food, but the booze dominated, because it was seen as the ultimate solution. Because you felt better when you drank, so you thought, so you felt, but you weren't really better. That was part of the dream and the nightmare of delusion. Thinking that this is better because you have the illusion of feeling better. So the alcohol, opens you up. You have this sensation, perception of, relief. I feel better now. I feel good. Your molecules are kind of like spread out or something. They're expanding. They have a moment of release, but it's not release. It's addiction. To alcohol as part of the solution, and there is no solution there. Transcendence is the solution. Awakening beyond the need for that kind of pleasure and seeing that pleasure as the pain that it is very, very helpful. So it's not pleasure. You have to see it for what it is. It's pain. It's suffering. Screaming out to you that you need to discipline yourself. You need to rise above the instincts of that program. Mm-hmm. 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 Everyone is differently psychic. In the case of my family roots, they were tuned into the spirits, so they were psychic in nature relative to that. So they'd see the spirits, they'd talk to the dead, and so on and so forth. So you have that species of psychics, but then they would call me a different psychic, but I was psychic in my own way. See? So I would see that, especially when I was young. I would see spirits and entities and ghosts and all of that. So that phenomena, astral star dust energy, showed up in my case quite often as a child, but that's in my blood. So let's say it's genetic predisposition towards that kind of visual effect. See, it's psychic. I mean, it's etheric in nature, subtle, see, in that sense. But I was much more into the sound than they were. They didn't hear what I heard, but I heard. See? So we're talking about different perceptions that have to do with the subtle level of the perception. See? And when you look at your body and you see what your perceptions are, audio, visual, taste, physical, touch, and so on, they can be heightened and differently heightened for different people. And so everyone has their let's say, specialty. So, and you might hear music more than other people do, and hear a certain kind of music more than other people do. And so, in terms of the audio, you might be more advanced than other people. So you'd have to take the responsibility to help other people understand what your level of music is in order for them to access it or put attention on it, to consider whether or not they can access it or not. So this is all developmental. But the psychic nature really refers primarily to feelings, psychic, feelings, sensing, psychic, feeling presences. So the astral body is functioning to determine to what degree a person is psychic in a certain conventional sense in terms of feeling and emotion. Okay. And emotion can enhance sensitivity or can obstruct sensitivity. Too much emotion, and you find the drinkers that are also very emotional and caught up in the emotion of, let's say, attachment to drinking and then emoting, right? And so up to a point, the drinking relieves emotional stresses and pressures, but then after that, you're stuck, you hit a wall. And it's then the booze, being drunk, being addicted to it, and not going beyond that. So that's the problem. So it becomes then obstructive use of emotion to the degree of a negative effect.
Mm-hmm. And
that applies to everybody. Mm-hmm. People all over the world on holidays get drunk.
Yeah.
They drink too much. Go ahead, comment.
Is the quality of interpersonal sensitivity different than the quality of sensitivity to what maybe the world needs beyond a specific person who may be either present or not present, off-site, but there's a sort of resonance with specific people?
Obviously, because we are in resonance with the whole universe, actually. Okay. And that might extend to an understanding of whether you're a cosmic being. You are, a native being. Native, it means in a natural condition, natural resonance with all of life. So we see that as a high point. It's like some kind of ultimate realization. That's a basic. Right? Like, first few years of life, you're in bliss. Right? Falling all over the place. Right? Uncontrollable. Right? Organs are used, right, to evacuate and freely. Right? And we lose that sense of openness and innocence as we evolve. And we accumulate, by way of belief, identificational programs that kill us, ultimately. Lead to every death. Every single death. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Especially the accidental ones, where nobody's watching the signs for what's happening. So death shows up. I said, well, someone was off duty here. Someone was negligent. Someone was drunk. Someone was distracted by something else and wasn't paying attention. Someone wasn't here and present. Mm-hmm. You're here as long as you need to be here, and you're doing what you need to be doing here. See? So part of the process. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My elders would gather us, a few children, say, come on, hear us talk, let us talk. So, like a native gathering a circle, circle of the family circle. Say, now we're going to talk about the spiritual, what you don't ordinarily talk about. Nobody's talking about it, unless we talk about it. Okay? Everybody's talking about candy, new clothes, toys, all right? All these things, but not about the spiritual. So, Because without the spiritual, you couldn't have anything. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't do anything. So you need the spiritual. You need to know that what's really running the show is the spiritual, the living, right? The intelligence, right? The soul. Right? So that place where good feeling is more important than all the material things you can have. Clothes, face, appearance, cosmetics, hairdos, right? Shaves, teeth, all of that. The spiritual is more important. It's critical. It's original. So we have to give that some thought. As Catholics, people who are part of the church concept or culture, well, then there was a religious element there. So there was a salvation element there. So, but it wasn't about save yourself. It was about somebody else was going to save you if you put your attention on it, which is not bad. That's the starting point. It wasn't necessarily true. Because I had more people who were talking about praying for Jesus and living a good life and never seeing him and never hearing from him personally. So we can't say that's his fault. We can't say it's their fault. It's just disconnect. No evidence of something that was real to them, and so what do? Ordinarily, they go out and drink. So coming right back to that. Justification for drinking, escaping, see, finding pleasure. Not in the truth or reality of the spiritual, but going right back to that. And so this is what the elders try to communicate to the kids. That we need the spiritual first. We have to understand what that is first, and then we may make better choices as we proceed and grow up and, evolve and mature and become a self, and our worst enemy in the process, which is often the case. So the idea of having a soul as a center of goodness is very important. Because the kids will think about that there is something inside. It's not the God outside, there's something inside, which goes now to the topic of bodhi. See, original mind is here, it's present. And so the children need to hear about it. We all need to hear about original mind so that we can feel it, resonate with it, and have some reality with it. This is original mind. What does original mind do? How does it look? How does it walk? What can we say about it that helps us to be more in line with what we really are in spirit? So the idea of bringing the children in and bringing the family in to talk about these things could be a healing process, and not any form of power structure or manipulation, but just opening the conversation to dimensions of awareness that are fundamental to our reality. Human nature, spiritual nature. The women have to be mothers, and not just physical mothers. Women have to be the spiritual mothers. That's their ancestral inheritance. To be the wise women, the medicine women. But they have to awaken to that in themselves. That they are the medicine women of the race. The mothers of the race, the spiritual mothers of the race is very important, not just your own personal family. But the heart is not just this little thing, right? That is to one man and one kid. No, the heart is bigger than that. The heart is all. We have to understand the true nature of the heart is universal. It's cosmic. And mothers are linked to that. Because women in my tradition, my family tradition, were linked to the cosmic, and they knew it. And they responded accordingly, where they were mothering other people. In my father's house, which was a church next to a synagogue, I had a church there, they would open the doors for the people to come in and feed them. My grandmother would always seek out, would make more food than for her family. She said, bring friends in, strangers, and it was kind of like a Christian approach to it. But it was good to see that in action, see. Because I was welcome, my friends were welcome, everybody was welcome in. See. So this is part of the mothering of life, see. The mother in each one of us. I mean, men are not just men. They're raised by mothers to be mothers themselves. And this is important, because this is what can make a difference on the planet at this time. See, now we see the rise of the women, the blue wave coming in, and this is all very auspicious. I was hoping for this for many years, seeing more of the women stand up, more leadership, but I don't mean women who are really men in disguise, but women who are women, were heart beings, in truth. See, let it be so.